now.
Leave it like this now. Okay. Like this. Okay.
Alright, so I don't know if they are seeing or not. You better please come and check.
Yes, you are there.
Alright, wonderful. Yeah. We're going to chant the prayer again since there was a Vigna. Vigna means a disturbance. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Kamasya aptim jagatah pratishtham. We have done this, but just to help us remember where we are, Nachiketa is being told the following. What is he being told? He is being told that he is a exemplary student. Why is he an exemplary student? Because he has left everything. He has left everything for the sake of this knowledge. He has abandoned all the things. What are the things? Things, desirable things. And what kind of desirable things he has abandoned? Huh? What did they say?
Well,
That was earlier. But what is, what is Lord Yama acknowledging that he has abandoned in this particular verse? The ultimate thing he has abandoned. Ultimate thing being moksha, he has abandoned moksha, correct? Say no quickly. Yeah.
Heaven.
Okay. He has abandoned not just heaven.
All desires. All desires.
Everybody is fishing, fishing in the air. At least if we fish in water, some hope is there of catching something. But if you fish in the air, what will happen? Nothing. Yeah. Hiranyagarbha. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yes. What does that mean?
the power to make
A nice sounding word. A. Yeah?
Reflection of the.
What is Hiranyagarbha? A. Nice sounding word. B. Gobbledygook. C. What is Hiranyagarbha? Tell me.
Ishvara's power to manifest.
Yeah. Manifesting potential of Bhagavan, the unmanifest power ready to create things. Ready to, not fully, in bloom, but a potential, as a potential and as something that is ready to create. It is called Hiranyagarbha. It is, what's the word for it? This is a position. It's a celestial position, right? Manned by what? Manned by a celestial being. Who is a celestial being? How do you become a celestial being?
Doing lots of good stuff.
Doing lot of good things. Too many good things you do. When you get bound by golden shackles, still shackles nonetheless, but you get bound by golden shackles. And what the Upanishad says, it's a belief that you will become, because of all this good punya, what will happen? You will become a celestial being. And what happens when you become a celestial being? Wonderful power. I mean, imagine being in charge of manifesting things. Yeah. That's why people here want siddhis. What is siddhi? Power to manifest. That's why sitting here, people are trying to have small siddhis, Like you should show the empty hand, like this, and then suddenly there should be chocolate. Like that. And where did it come from? From the bowl, of course, because there was no space to keep it. Then what? Then this is the situation. And so imagine if by manifesting little bit of this and that here, manifesting means what? The human siddhi is just basically stealing things from here, and it's a sleight of hand. Because there's only a certain amount of things in the universe. You can, even if you do telekinesis, that is movement of things from one thing to another thing, what happens? It's just that one thing is moved to another thing. You cannot create something else. Yeah. Even if you manifest something, you either bring it from the farm or somebody, from the shop or something, you just, bring it here with certain powers. Now, that is a small power. Boring. Yeah, because, just little bit chocolate, vibhuti, who cares? But this power is to be the right hand of Bhagavan. So much power. It is a padavi, a status, which can, you know, fill you with so much pride. You have the whole world in your hands, literally. There's one song. I have the whole world in my. Really, you have the whole world. Whole Jagat is in my hands. You can sing, and a lot of people, including who? Somebody we know, Lord Yama himself fell prey to this desire, which we saw, and he thought he will get that, but these celestial positions, they get vacant very very rarely, because it is it is there for the whole cycle of creation, and what gets vacant you have to take. You cannot sit there and argue with Bhagavan, because it is according to your own karma. And so Lord Yama got the clearing house position. What clearing house? Not sweepstakes. Clearing house for jivas. What a boring job. Yeah, what a boring job. Every day sending somebody to heaven, sending somebody to the other place, sending somebody to the life of a dog, making some, jiva into a cat. Very boring. But what he really wanted was this Hiranyagarbha Padam, Hiranyagarbha's position. This is what he wanted, could not get. And so, lamenting that and then praising Nachiketa a little more. What does he say? He says, something, this is all just a wrong thing that I have done. But you, or even the student, is better than the teacher, he's told. Why is the student better than the teacher? Because the teacher had to go through certain mistakes and learn from them. The student did not even go there. Yeah. And so this is high praise. And then he continues and says that this is Urugayam. This is where we had started. Urugayam means the thing that is the most worshipful. Urugayam. Pratishtham drishtva. This is the pratishtha of the Jagat, because the Jagat cannot exist without the creative potential. Like I said last time, it's an expansive, expanding universe. And in this expanding universe, what is happening? There is a lot of, things being created. And so that creative power is flowering. And so the creative power is a huge thing. But you have said no to that. You have said no to what is ultimately accomplishable in samsara. The final ultimate thing in samsara is what? Becoming a celestial. Or going to Brahmaloka, one and the same thing. Some kind of a trip, a power trip, a holiday out trip, some kind of a trip is there. But this trip, why is it called a trip? Because it trips you. That's why it's called a trip. That which trips you up is called a trip, and so you did not fall into that. Now, why did Nachiketa go to Lord Yama? In the beginning to fulfill his father's words, but later on to gain this self-knowledge, correct? Is self-knowledge coming yet? No. And so Nachiketa is marching in place. He's very upset. And he will tell, now enough of this, where is my third boon? He will say that. But before that, Lord Yama is still waxing eloquent. And he's slowly writing flowery introductions to Vedanta. And one such introduction comes in the next verse. Tam durdarsham gudham anupravishtam guhahitam gahvareshtam puranam adhyatma yoga adhigamena devam matvadhiraha harshashokau jahati. Yeah. So he is giving a little taste of what happens when you gain this knowledge. which everybody wants, because without which it is difficult to proceed. And the human being is such that even though it is told in the beginning, one promptly forgets. Yeah, from the spelling of Hiranyagarbha, from the word Hiranyagarbha to everything else is forgotten. Why? Because Vedanta should be approached with a clean slate of the mind. No notions, no nothing. So therefore, let me forget what was taught before. So this frequently happens, and therefore the Upanishad knows the human mind. The Upanishad knows that the human mind is just the most distracted thing ever. And because it is so distracted, it has to be kind of roped in, because it's like a grazing thing. So the mind goes and the senses graze in various pastures. Yeah. Green and not so green. They keep grazing. And the grazing is karma. And then the indigestion after the grazing is called karma phala. That's what happens. So in this grazing, what is forgotten is that there is really no need to graze. Yeah. That there is nothing to graze, there's nothing to search, and everything that you're searching for, every little daisy that you're ingesting, and every little leaf of arugula that you're after is actually is within, arugula within. That is what you're really seeking. And so this has to be continually reminded, because otherwise the person falls off the quest, in the sense that there is a kind of a disconnect that first develops slowly and then seems to take over the mind until one starts to forget why one is doing this study in the first place. One forgets. And so the Upanishad keeps reminding in this particular way, through a loquacious, Lord Yama, who is waxing eloquent on this knowledge, we hear this particular verse. So, Tam means that this Ishvara, him, Ishvara. And what is this Ishvara? Durdarsham, Ishvara, Brahman. Durdarsham means, it can mean two things. It can mean a terrible sight. Is that the correct meaning here? No, because Ishvara is being you, cannot be a terrible sight. And the second meaning is that which is difficult to see. Dukkhena darshanam yasya durdarshaha. Tam, durdarsham. So durdarsham means that which is difficult to see. So if you start looking, where is Ishvara? Ishvara, where are you? What will happen? Nothing. Right? So this is difficult to see. And yet everybody says, I want to have darshan of Bhagavan. This is what the thing is. And so that is why it is difficult to see. First reason, durdarsham, we'll just go one by one, word by one word. Difficult to see. Why? Because it is you. That's why it is difficult to see. The subject can only objectify the object. The subject can look, the subject, I am the subject. What is this? Flower, object. So I look at this flower and I can say, oh, it's a nice purple color and it's got so many petals and it's got a stem and I'm holding the stem and this is a beautiful flower. I can say that. So, but the thing is, if I want to hold myself like that and look at myself, not the body. I can objectify the body. I can say, okay, the hand is numb or the leg is paining or the shoulder is tight or the brain is not working. Anything I can say, right? Even to say the brain is not working, somebody beyond the brain is there, right? But that somebody who is beyond the mind and the brain and everything, the one who is always present, I cannot see as an object. Thank God. Why? Because it is limitless. Oh, but I want to see. It's already you. Are you here? Say yes quickly. Yes. If you are here, how do you know you are here? Are you here? How did you say yes? Of course, you know, the answer will be because you told me to say yes. I said yes. Are you here? Yes. I'm here. And so if you are here, then how do you know you are here? Because I know I am. I know I am. It's pratyaksha, it is not paroksha, it is not remote from you. Pratyaksha means immediately evident, self-evident. So for a thing to be known, it has to be evident through the use of what is called a pramana. What is pramana? A means of knowledge, a means of a way of knowing. It has to be, you know, it has to be either known through a means of knowledge, such as the eyes see the flower, the nose smells the flower, you know, and if the flower is capable of making any noise, the ear hears the rustling of the petals. So that is the what is called that which becomes evident to me through a means of knowledge. And then the second category, well, that is for the first category of things. The second kind of things is that which is already evident. It doesn't require a means of knowledge to become evident. The first is called, pramana siddha. Siddha means evident. And the other one is called self-evident, evident by itself, swataha siddha. Swatah siddha. And pramana siddha. So how many objects are there that are pramana siddha, that are known to me?
One.
No.
Many.
Yeah, many, not three. Many. How many objects do I need to use my means of knowledge, whether they are eyes or inference or anything, in order to make them known to me? The whole Jagat is full of objects that are not become evident to me if I use a means of knowledge. And then how many things are there that are self-evident? One. Yeah. Don't say radioactive isotope. That is also self-evident. No. There is only one thing. Correct? That doesn't have to make itself known through the use of a means of knowledge, because it is what is called self-shining, self-evident. I know I am. Don't ask the next question, what are you? Because we are going to be in trouble. Idiot is the answer that will come. Donkey, I don't like myself. All these answers will come. Why am I such a fool? Why do I behave like this? Why can't I be perfect? These are the answers that will come. So let's not go there, okay? Because we are not, that's not what this class is about. What this class is about is to understand that there is just one thing, which is myself, which doesn't need to report to somebody else to become evident. That is what we call consciousness. That is what we call Brahman, the self, Ishvara, I. Many names, one thing. All right? Okay. So now, the Pramana Siddha, that which is evident to me through the use of what? The eyes, other ways of knowing, the various pramanas, the various means of knowing. Those are so many, plenty, correct? And I can hold them. I have power over them, right? And when I say I don't mean the I which is Ishvara. I mean the I which is ego, ahamkara, the I notion. So I have power over this in the sense that I can name it, and this is one of the ways of exercising power. As soon as you look at some new thing they find through the Hubble telescope, immediately they have to name it based on who looked for it and who found it. It's the exercise of a certain power. And when the people colonized the countries, in the centuries, they just immediately named it whatever they wanted. They changed the name of the roads. They changed the name of all kinds of things. And then, so when they change the names and when they name the country into something else, it's again an exercise of power. So then the human being is very comfortable having that separation between the subject and the object, and then objectifying the objects from the point of view sitting in the gallery of the subject. Objectify all the objects and have a good time. And then what? And then suddenly, after objectifying and naming everything, one finds oneself in a lonely place. Because what? They limit me, I limit them. And what do I want to be? Limitless. This is what happens. Now, we are talking of a I that is always evident, but then it doesn't need a means of knowledge at all, you know. But since it doesn't need a means of knowledge and it's always evident, it is the undercurrent of all other things because of, which are known, because of which things are known. That's what it is. So, in a sense, it is easy to forget. It's easy to take the I, which is revealed through the Upanishad as the truth of oneself as Ishvara, for granted. Yeah, it's easy to take the truth of oneself for granted. Why? Because one is spinning. One is spinning around in all kinds of various, what's the word for it? Pools of concerns, of fears, of thoughts, of all kinds of things. One is spinning around. And therefore, what we have to see is that's the first reason why the Upanishad says Durdarsham, difficult to see. Why? Because it is the truth of the self, because of which all activities take place, which itself is actionless, which does not hear but is the ear of the ear, it enables one to hear, which does not see anything but because of which everything people can see, that which enables sight, that which is taught through words but itself is just beyond words. That is what we are talking about. It's a bundle of paradoxes, and so this I alone is very difficult to see. First reason, Durdarsham. Second reason, why? Because it is buried in an avalanche. Ooh, what kind of avalanche? Ragadvesha avalanche, because of ignorance. A big, like boulders of Ragadvesha coming and raining upon this poor I, hidden in this I, and the I is hidden because what is evident, is the things that make noise are more evident than the things that don't make noise. Agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what makes noise, more noise than Ragadvesha? Nothing. So, because it's constantly clamoring for attention and it's constantly clamoring for fulfillment. All the preferences, all the fears, all these this whole gamut of wants and don't wants, pile up on the I, making it difficult to see. Yeah. And when the ragadveshas are not cleared, then there is no adhikaritvam. What is adhikaritvam?
Readiness for the knowledge.
Readiness or preparedness for the knowledge. There is no preparedness. And if there is no preparedness, can the knowledge happen?
No.
Cannot happen. So the preparation has to be there. And for the preparation, first we have to clear out this debris of this avalanche in the form of ragadveshas, which is, coating the psyche, so that there is no space for this I to shine as it is. Second reason why it is called, Durdarsham. What was the first reason?
Because it's self-evident.
It is self-evident, so it should be easy to see.
Because of the Ragadveshas.
That was the second reason. What was the first reason?
But difficult to see because it's not
It's taken for
because it can't be seen with the means of knowledge.
It's not an object.
It's not an object. Yeah. Second reason?
Ragadveshas.
I'm having fun. What is the second reason?
Also, if someone needs to be prepared, right, to see.
Second reason is that ragadveshas, or same thing, preparation, lack of preparation. Durdarsham. Should we go over the first reason again?
No.
Good. And then, what's the next word? Tam durdarsham gudham. Gudham means hidden. Hidden.
Hidden.
Yes. How is it hidden?
In the cave.
Yes. Gudham. Hidden. Deeply tucked away. It's tucked away. Tucked away where?
In the
So,
heart.
somewhere where nobody can see. Tucked away. Stored away, tucked away, hidden away. Because it's precious, it's hidden away. Hidden again and buried under the avalanche of all kinds of problems. It is hidden. Yeah. More about that, because the hidden has to be read with, another word, which is what? Gudham anupravishtam. Anupravishtam means it has gone into hiding. Wish to enter. It has entered the hiding stage. Anupravishtam. So first, it's like the Atma is wearing, this is the winter season, 5 sweaters. Yeah, Panchakoshas. So first there is body. The body, why? So the body is a hiding place for Atma. Why? Because one gets completely, preoccupied with the needs of the body. Is not able to go beyond that. So it becomes a locus of error, thinking I am as good as this body. This is the problem. I am as good as this body. If the body is okay, I am okay. When will the body be okay? Tell me. Yeah, keep on dreaming. That's all we have to say. Enter the dream state. Body means, in fact, the 2 words for body in Sanskrit are not good news. The first word is what? What? Shariram. Shariram means Shiryamana Swabhava Shariram. That which is, whose nature is to disintegrate. Not so great, right? Yeah, but that is the definition of the word body. That which is supposed to disintegrate. So if it doesn't disintegrate quickly, you have to call the doctor. Like, what is because it's behaving against its own nature. Shariram, that which disintegrates. Second word for body? Deha. Deha means body. Comes from that which is fit to be consigned to the flames. Yeah. So you pick. Depending on the mode of disposal, disintegrates means goes 6 feet under, and then that which is fit to be burnt is the other one. Depending upon the mode of disposal, we have 2 definitions of body. You see? But the body becomes a powerful deterrent to seeing or understanding the Atma, because it comes in the way. And why does it come in the way? Because of the identification with the body. Yeah, it becomes a problem. It is problematic for, seeing that this is, that I is even though it's manifesting through the body, it is separate from the body. In other words, the body is Atma, because everything is Atma. Atma is not the body. First sweater, okay? And then the second sweater is what? Prana. Before, yeah. Annamaya, then Pranamaya. What is Pranamaya? I am as good as the breathing. So, then what? Yeah, you just have to sigh. That's all. So, any disturbance in the breathing means I am disturbed. Yeah. Where is the paper bag? That's what you have to say. Yeah. Why paper bag? Because sometimes, if one is anxious, it comes out in the breathing. And if you breathe some carbon dioxide, apparently that anxiety, balances out. One more reason to go eco and green and carry paper bag. Yeah. So Pranamaya, I'm as good as the breath. Then Manomaya, I'm as good as what? Mind. I'm as good as the mind.
Is the mind the trickiest one?
Trickiest one. Yes. And I'm as good as the mind. So if the state of the mind is equal to I. And how often does the mind change?
Frequently.
Huh? By the time I have said that sentence, it has already gone all over the place and come back. That's why it's called Manojavaha. Manojava means it's the fastest mode of travel. Yes. The speed of the mind. So sitting here, you can go to Australia and come back. The furthest continent. You can think of Australia, you can think of, Melbourne, anything. You can go there and then think about it. And if you have some landmarks that you know that you would like to see, or a person that you would like to see, think of them, and then what? Come back. All sitting right here. And then if the mind falls into a state of sadness, what does the person say? I am sad. If the mind, gets angry, the person says, I am angry. If the mind is restless, the person identifies and says, I am restless. Mind is Atma, mind you. Atma is not the mind. If you don't understand this, never mind. Moving on. Moving on. The fourth sweater, what is that? Vijnanamaya. I am as good as my actions. And think about it, in the modern contemporary world, when you meet somebody, first thing you ask, what is your name, right? Who are you? What is your name? Second thing,
What do you do?
what do you do? That's why sometimes people, when they meet me, if they don't know what a sadhu is, they get very discombobulated. And the conversation doesn't last too long, because what else will they talk? So, what do you do? I teach. So, how often do you teach? Oh, once or twice a week. What do you do the rest of the time? Nothing. Really? Nothing. I don't have to do anything. And so that is something which is difficult to understand, because here this is a culture of doership, and a culture where doership is worshipped, is elevated to the level of a shrine, and is put on the throne, and and then you do the 108 names, doershipaya namaha. That's what you keep worshipping, the doership, both outside of you and within you. This is the problem. And so 5 minutes if you sit down without doing anything, there is anxiety. Oh, I'm not doing anything, I'm not doing enough, and therefore what? I'm not enough. You see, this is the bad link. Yes, very bad link. And that is the fourth sweater, Vijnanamaya. Then what?
Experience.
Yeah, Anandamaya. Anandamaya means what? I am as good as a victim. Really, that's what it means. I am inside this whole, I'm like a leaf that is being blown by good fortune and bad fortune. So when I'm lucky and good things happen, of course I don't notice it, because that's how it's supposed to be. And when I am not lucky and bad things happen, I sit and, make a list. What kind of a list?
Crybaby list.
Pity party list.
Pity party.
Pity party guest list. Yeah. Because misery desires company. Yeah. It's no fun to be miserable by yourself, and it's no fun when you're feeling blue to hang around other people who are feeling wonderful. That's not fun either. So you want to have an exclusive party, a guest list of people who can bring the appropriate things for this pity potluck. The dessert of despair, yeah, the soup of hopelessness, and all these kinds of things from appetizer to dessert. This is what is called the rehearsing this victimization. That I am as good as other people's omissions and commissions towards me. This is doership. Experiencership. This is what is the 5 ways in which it is gudham anupravishtam, means this Atma has entered in and through all these things. Everywhere there is Atma, but Atma is not any one of these things. This requires a little bit of understanding. If you don't understand it right now, it's okay. Agre spashtam bhavet. Later on, it will become clear. Keep listening. So then, gudham anupravishtam, and this is what the Taittiriya Upanishad talks about. Tat srishtva tadeva anupravishat. Same thing. Tat srishtva, having created everything, this Ishvara Tattva, this sentient consciousness, this Ishvara entered into everything that was created in and through all the layers is Ishvara. It's not that you have to remove the layers to see Ishvara, just like you have to break open the pot to see an empty pot to see pot space. You don't have to do that. So similarly, everything is Ishvara, but Ishvara is not any one thing. This is what we have to see. And this, because of the fact that this has gone, the Atma has gone into hiding, as it were. Very difficult to locate. Where to locate it, How to locate? Oh, body. Body, of course, is Atma. So Atma is the body? No. Same thing all the way. Mind is Atma. There can be no mind without Atma. But Atma is not the mind. There can be no, prana without Atma. Atma is not the prana. There can be no action without Atma. No doer without Atma. Atma is not the doer. There can be no experience without Atma. Atma is not the experiencer. So that is why it is Gudham Anupravishtham. It has gone, Atma has gone into the witness protection program. Yeah, it doesn't have a name, it doesn't have a location, nobody knows how to contact it except by being the witness. Look at that. Yeah, what an example. Yeah, except by being the witness. Gone into the witness protection program. Incognito Atma. Tam, Gudham Anupravishtam. Then what? Guha Hitam. Here comes the cave. Guha means cave. Guha Nihitam. Sitting in a dark cave. What is this cave? A cave is the mind. What is the darkness? My ignorance of my own self is the darkness. And of course, the cave has to be a little more interesting than just the mind being like a cave. You have to, bring out that metaphor a little more. There are stalactites of doubt, stalagmites of despair, and then what? Bats of ragadveshas that keep batting at you. Yeah. Why bats? Because they're always, the priorities are hanging upside down. That's why bats. And they drive you batty. That's why bats. And then what else? So we have, and then it's always damp. Dampness is equated to hopelessness. It's dark. Dark means it's ignorant, shrouded in ignorance. It's got cobwebs. So many things you can keep on going. Yeah. What do the cobwebs stand for? Identification with the past. Yeah, that's what it is. Old things always coming in the way of leading a fulfilled life. And so therefore we have all these problems, and that is why it says Guha. The mind is like a Guha. What is the next word? Guha Hitam. Gahvareshtam. It is a Upanishad made up word. Gahvare tishtati iti gahvareshtam. Gahvara means very difficult circumstances. Horrible accommodations here. And this Atma is living in very bad, accommodations. Yeah. Ahankara is the slum lord. And it is living under degenerate accommodations, horrible situations. It's living in the filthiest of places, full of rats and all kinds of disgusting things. It is thriving in the midst of disgusting things. Yeah. What is this disgusting, difficult things? This is the conditions of the mind. Self-judgment, fear, the avalanche of ragadveshas that we talked about, which make everything so difficult to bear. So in the difficulty, and also if you look at it collectively in the samsara, actually samsara is really individual, yeah. But if you look at it in terms of one's experience in the world, samsara, oh my God, in this horrible samsara. So where do you look for the Atma? Out of samsara or in samsara?
Out of samsara.
No, in samsara alone Atma is. Out of samsara what is there out of samsara? Yeah. Yeah, samsara means what is samsara? We have to see. This identification with the life of becoming. And so if I am, it's all an internal job, inside job. So if I'm associated with or identified with becoming something or the other, because I am feeling discontented with myself. I'm constantly trying to become this one, that one, something or the other. I'm constantly becoming. Then that is called samsara, you know. And that, write it down. And that becomes the whole sum total of my experience. Sum total of my sorry experience. That's what makes me a samsari, because I am in samsara. But are you really in samsara? No. You're in samsara as though, correct? So the person who recognizes I am in samsara it's the same place where you recognize that I'm bound, is also the same place that you recognize that you are free, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not that the knowledge of the bondage happens in the toes and the knowledge of the freedom happens in the nose. No, both happen in the same place, right? Yeah. So both happen in the same place. And what is that happens? What happens is very beautiful, is that the one who feels bound understands that there is nothing called bondage, that I am free. The cow tie, the cow which was as though tied and as though freed. So that cow I am. This is what we have to see. And so in order to see this is in and through the raga dveshas, in and through the difficulty only I will see this. I don't, it's not that I have to have some kind of out of body experience in order to recognize the Atma. Of course, Atma is not in samsara, that is true. Atma is not a samsari. But that non-samsari and the samsari are living a split life within the same body, mind, sense complex. Yeah. As we have seen, as we have seen in DC, but as we will see here later in the same Kathopanishad, where there are two, what's its name, as though experiences within the same body, mind, sense complex. The one is a binding experience. I am as good as this body, I'm as good as this mind. Oh, I'm so sad. And the other one is a liberating experience. The one who is unaffected is also obtained within the same body, mind, sense complex as the one who thinks I am affected. In fact, are they really two? No. It's because of my addiction to samsara, because I've had too many karma cocktails, I see them as two. Yeah, I see them as two. But how many are there? There is only one that is manifests as though as the other one, because I identify with that experience. Yeah. So therefore what? Even the one, that Atma which is unaffected by difficulty, which is available even in the midst of the most painful experiences, which is free of that affliction, that is ever present I. Gahvareshtam. Gahvare tishtati. It is available within the ragadveshas, within the difficulties, within the self-judgment, in and through the self-flagellation, in and through the self-non-acceptance. What is there is the unafflicted, unaffected I. And then what? Puranam. Purana means pura eva navacha. Navacha. And that which is ancient. Oh, Atma is very old, yes. Which birthday of Atma are we celebrating? No birthday, because it doesn't have birth. And so that which was always the same, and which is what now? Now how it is? The same. Before how it was? Same. Unaffected before, unaffected now. It's not like a copper pot. When you buy it, it's nice and shiny. You bring it home, put it somewhere, and then after, 3-4 weeks, what happens? The tarnish develops, right? Yeah. And this is not like the Atma. It doesn't get tarnished. It is as new. It is newly minted, but it is timelessly ancient. That is what Purana. So, Gahvareshtam Puranam. And this one is very nice, because each word here, first we started with Durdharsham, difficult to see. Why is it difficult to see? Guhahitam, because it has gone into hiding. Second one. And then why is it Guhahitam? Why is it gone into hiding? the Gudam Anupravishtam. Why is it this thing? Because it is in the mind. It is within the ragadveshas of the mind. There is that observer who is unaffected. And where is this observer found? Right within all the samsaric experiences, the unaffected one also is right within the same body and mind sense complex which I am not in peace with. That is where this one also is there. And then Purana, that which is ever new and as ancient as ever, timelessly ancient, ever new, ever present, unaffected. And then what? How do I get to it? Adhyatma yogena, Adhyatma yoga adhigamena. Adhigama means gaining this knowledge. How? Through yoga. What kind of yoga? Which asana I should do? Adhyatma yoga. Adhyatma yoga. It's a special kind of yoga. What is that yoga? It says a yoga of withdrawal, explains Adi Shankara. A yoga of withdrawal. Vishayebhyaha samhritya paravritya chetasaha atmani samadhanam. This is the definition of this particular kind of withdrawal that Adi Shankara is saying, calling Adhyatma Yoga. Vishayebhyaha paravritya. Vishaya is what? Sense objects. All kinds of things that say, aa jao, come, kha jao, eat me, come to me, experience me. And within the course of one day, how many things catch our attention? Is there any limit to that? And even if people who are not interested in the material things, then they are interested in some kind of mental entertainment, mental, things they want to have. Stimulation, some kind of a thing. So, one is attracted to so many things within one course of one day. Even in 1 minute, there are so many things, so many desires, so many fancies that take the foothold in the mind. And so, paravritya means returning the mind away from them. It's not shunning them. It's not identifying with them and then letting the fancies take a hold in the space of the heart. Let the fancies come and go. Do not shun the thoughts. Do not identify with the thoughts. This is called open eye meditation. This is what we do with the closed eyes, right? This is what we do with open eyes. So the open eye meditation is like that. That whatever comes, I just observe. If I don't like it, it is good because it will go away soon. How long the mental states will last. But not liking the mental state is giving it power. Yeah. It will stay. As soon as you say, I don't want you to stay, go, go, go. What will it do? It will say, give me a cup of tea. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. And then if you say, no, 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 I'm not even going to give you a chair to sit, get out of here. If you shun it, it will say, okay, I'm staying. I've invited myself for dinner. This is, because the not liking is an engagement. Yeah. We are talking of a neutrality where the raga dveshas are not in gear. There is no engagement with the thoughts and the fancies so that they don't have a place to sit. They just come and go, come and go, come and go. It's like Grand Central Station, the mind is. So many people are there, And once in a while at 12 o'clock they do a little dance. What that is? What that is, I don't know, but it's entertaining. Yeah, mob flash. So here the mind also flashes something, some ideas come, some creative dances take place, and then after that one poem comes out or somebody writes something or paints something, and then after that you be the person you be the station, you be stationary, and then the people come and go. This is what has to be the thing. So this is called Adhyatma Yoga. And so clearly what is being taught here is Nididhyasana, contemplation. And can you contemplate upon what you don't know?
No.
No. How can you contemplate if you don't know? So that means what? First you have to know. And what do you do in order to know? Shravanam, to listen to the teaching. So once you have listened, then you have to, then only you can contemplate. So the contemplation includes the listening as well. So this is called Adhyatma Yoga, where there's a different kind of a commitment. It's not that you're committing to a person. It's not that you're committing to some, thing. It's your commitment is to yourself. Your commitment is to access the highest nature of yourself. That is the commitment. The only thing within you, that is the commitment. And so the commitment for Nididhyasana has to have a staying power. This Ayaram Gayaram means sometimes comes, sometimes goes. With Shraddha, sometimes I feel very devoted and committed. And sometimes what happens? No, not so committed. Sometimes there are doubts. What is happening? Nothing is happening. Sometimes there are no doubts. And so this is okay in the beginning of one's quests. In fact, that's what one can expect. So it has to be okay. But then as one advances, one has to stay with the teaching and make a commitment to stay with the teaching and the knowledge, so that one is not unseated by the swinging winds of raga and dvesha. So we have to stay regardless of what it feels like, because it won't feel comfortable many times. Why? Because there are some deep things that are coming out, or whatever it is, or some occlusion is there, the unconscious is there, the frozen child is thawing out, which is not a pretty process. When it does that, then you have to wipe up the mess it leaves behind. But you have to be gentle with yourself, and you have to be committed. And that is also part of what is called Adhyatma Yoga. Adhyatma Yoga Adhigamena. So through this Adhyatma Yoga, Matva means knowing this teaching as oneself. Dhiraha means the one who is a Viveki, the one who has Viveka, who makes the right choices, a discerning person, a deserving student is called Dhira. Gives up. Jahati gives up. What does the person give up? What is the word there? Harsha Shokau. Harshascha Shokascha Harsha Shokau. Like Ramau. Two things are there. Harsha and Shoka. Two things are given up. What is Harsha?
Joy.
From Hrish, to be happy, joy. And Shoka we already know. Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah, gives up happiness and sadness. Oh, but I don't want to give up happiness. I thought this is all, what is that? Vedanta was happy pill, Yeah, it is, you take some happy pills and feel happy. I thought this is happy pill, extended release, timed release, happy pill. And now you are saying give up the happiness. Now, here, Harsha means the hysteria of elation, the drama of elation. You feel like a mad person. You don't know how happy you are. You're happy because you're just crazy, and then it's an experience. It's a high. You're hysterically happy, and then soon after that, what happens?
Sad.
Yeah, you crash. The higher you go, the greater is the distance to be covered for the crashing journey. Correct? Yeah. So Harsha Shoka Jahati means gives up the penchant for the bipolar experience. Really? Yeah. Really. Suddenly goes up, suddenly comes down, and in the high does all kinds of things which then, make one feel low, because in the high feels so powerful that anything goes. And then when anything goes, when you find out, when you come, because it's both of those, whether it's elation or depression, are places of subjectivity. The objective perception has to be in the middle. Just like the Buddha also said, follow safely the middle path. That's what Buddha also taught. And this is what it is. So it is avoiding the extremities of the continuum. Why? Because they are not safe. Because each one, otherwise one will be swinging like a pendulum. Because sometimes, people like to create conflict. Why? Because then they feel loved. You have to have a good fight, then you feel loved. How? Why? Don't ask. This is not rational. Why you can ask only when it's rational. Yeah. And sometimes people want to feel the drama, And I saw one film, I don't know how I managed to see it. It was a documentary, but I saw it with difficulty. It was all about various body piercings, various kinds. Piercing, not just piercing, stitching,
Yeah,
and
they cut.
yeah, they cut and they stitch as though this is a piece of cloth, and it was so difficult to watch, and it was all this kind of a thing, and that person was interviewed where there was not even one small piece in the body that had not had anything done to it, and that person was interviewed, why do you do this? Because I want to feel. You see, that's what it is. There is a certain numbness coming from the unconscious, and it is important for the person to feel through mutilating, what one has to mutilate the body, etc. And so this is this is a certain kind of a drama, and on a much lesser scale there are other kinds of dramas. What kinds of dramas are there? So many various kinds of dramas are there, creating certain drama, and people keep looking for magic in life. They want some drama. There is no magic happening. You are the magic, okay? Yeah, waiting to happen. The whole focus is on something coming from outside, suddenly making me, taking all my problems away and then making me all right. How is that going to happen? This is a subjective projection. And then on the other side is also the subjective projection of sinking into a place of victimization. I don't control anything. I just am a prey to everything that happens. This is my karma. This is my dharma. This is what is going on. One gives a big lecture. So both of those positions are dangerous for the person of self-knowledge, the person wanting to be on the path of self-knowledge. So therefore the discerning individual, understanding this and committing to a life of contemplation, committing to this knowledge without a second guessing oneself constantly, harsha shokau jahati, gives up the extremities in the form of in the favor of a safe and beautiful middle. And it has a very esoteric meaning as well, because the Atma is neither happy nor sad. Happy means what? It is not subjected to increase or decrease. If you equate happiness with increase of something, there is no increase for that which is infinite, correct? And then if depression is a decrease or a lack of something, then there is no lack. So therefore, if I identify with Atma, with the truth of myself, that is it's a more even place of limitlessness. It's an even place of limitlessness where I'm neither hysterically elated nor deeply upset. This is what one has to do. Okay? Yeah. So lots to think about. We will stop here and see if there are any questions. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Yeah.
Okay, well, beside the happiness and the sadness, but there is a certain state of bliss and maybe divine happiness that the Atma experience when...
No, Atma is you.
Yeah, but when
that
you
is
start...
you. It's not an experience.
Okay, so...
It's not away from you. It is you.
I understand, but
yeah.
There is... it's like a certain time I can feel it that. So if I can feel it, it's because I am using my body, my mind, and my senses, or is I myself, I can feel the I.
It's you in touch with yourself, and that's how it will be constantly. It's not bliss. It's you.
So then there is
Yeah.
no emotion whatsoever, you say?
No, because the emotions come from the pain of the past. And so even if the emotions are there, it's not that one becomes like a, like some kind of a robot. Why are you like this? I have self-knowledge. That's why. I'm neither smiling nor crying. See, I have self-knowledge. That is not the point. It's not some kind of a stoic kind of a thing. Emotions are there, but they don't have a bite. They do not bite. Yeah. It's like a toothless child. Yeah. So even if there is a certain storm in the inner teacup, in the mind cup, it blows over. It's okay. It's gone. It's done. It's forgotten. That's the difference between the
So it's like a perfect balance then that you're.
it's a balanced eye, because the eye is balanced. We avoid the imbalances. Yeah.
The other question, how interesting is that when we are in the womb, in our mother's womb, everything is dark. There is no light at all. In fact, when we come out of mama, it's like we see the light for the first time. It's kind of shocking. In fact, I was doing some research on that because, certain culture they have what they call the Madonna Nera, the Black Madonna, which can represent either really, really darkness or light, pure light.
The point being, what is
The point being that something that I don't understand in the fact that you saying you find Atma in the samsara. In fact, I was thinking like samsara, some scar or other. Maybe you look at your scar and you find yourself in a way. And,
sure?
But so this darkness.
No, darkness is not literal. Darkness means ignorance. There is no such thing as
Right.
darkness.
So
Darkness is unmanifest. Ignorance is, like that. It's Maya. It's unmanifest. It's where it is taken over, where the non-reality becomes the reality. That's what is called darkness. It's a metaphor. It's not to be taken literally. In fact, there is no such thing as darkness. Once there is light, there is no such thing as darkness. Yeah. So why is the womb? Why does not the womb have a little switch? So the baby to turn it on and read, do a little catch up on its reading, because and that is mainly because the womb is a place of gestation, and that is again like that Hiranyagarbha. It is hidden. So whenever anything is coming to be, it is hidden from you, hidden even from itself. So the process is all hidden. Of course, now we have way of, going in the womb and through ultrasound and MRI and other things. That's different. But as nature made it, it is a place of a safe hiding place, just like the Atma in the in the mind is also hidden. Yeah.
So the question will be for someone that is not in the path. If you are going through your life and you are immersed in your samsara and your ignorance, how do you start to see the first glimpse?
You already have the glimpse in
Right.
the form of the longing. You have a longing, and that longing has to be recognized, not too long hence. That's the only thing. Yes.
Well, there is a place that you can go to, where there is no light and it is extremely peaceful. What is that place? What's that dimension?
No, that is your own light. I mean, we say the Atma is the light of all lights.
But there is no light.
Yeah.
You don't see any light there.
Yeah, it's okay. It's you. It's not a dimension. It's you. A dimension would have to have measurements. That's why it's called dimension. It would have to have weight and length and breadth, so it would be within the time-space matrix. So it is not a dimension. It's you. It's the truth and the content of you.
So that is what they call shunyata, the void in Buddhism.
Yeah, they may be calling it that.
So the
Shunyata,
void is the
shunyata
thought.
doesn't mean emptiness for us. It means empty of forms and names. That's what it is. Yeah. Empty of ideas.
Well, that means ultimately, if we go deeply into the Buddhist teachings, that is the same. It is the same meaning.
We hope so, but I don't know if that's what they teach.
That's
Not
what
all of
I
them.
have been taught.
Yeah, not all of them teach that. Yeah.
So So when like I go to sleep and everything just kind of goes away, and then I wake up in the morning and everything starts to kind of come up again. It's like everything that's going on in the world, whether it could be, you know, good or bad, or, you know, some horrible event, or even something that everybody's like all excited, like today's 12/12, you know,
12, 12.
12/12/12. You know,
Did
like,
everybody get excited about 11/11/11 last
Yeah,
year?
last
that
year.
was very
but,
powerful too.
but what I'm saying,
Oh, okay.
I guess what I'm saying
I don't
is,
remember. Yeah.
what I'm saying is, I'm starting to understand that none of these experiences really mean anything, but I can get caught up in them.
Yes.
And then it becomes like a drug or a distraction. So it's really all just drama, and none of it is meant for me to be like, ooh, this is something that's never.
Yes, because first there is
Yeah.
drama, then there is trauma.
Yeah, so it's
That's
all
what
just like
happens.
watching TV, you know,
Yes.
and I'll have responses, but not then just to turn the TV off and don't worry
Yes.
about it.
And then turn the internal
Yeah.
channels also off once in a
Yeah.
while. Yeah.
What's the definition of Hiranyagarbha Sandhi? How do you break that word?
Hiranye, you know, no, Hiranyam Garbhe Yasya. It's a compound. It's a, it has been wrongly translated as the golden, golden embryo in the womb. Speaking of womb metaphors, so that's why it's like the manifesting potential. But don't take that literally. Yeah.
And Hiranyagarbha and Maya are different.
Maya is the
Maya.
feminine way of looking at that. It's a different way of looking at it. Yeah. It's the power of Ishvara. This is Maya is more general. Here it's a specific celestial entity charged with, you know, making Maya do her job. That's the idea. Yeah.
Jiva can achieve to Hiranyagarbha status in a sense in
Oh, yeah.
in the karmic,
Yeah.
but that would put Hiranyagarbha as a celestial in the realm of the covering of Maya.
Yes. Definitely. Yeah, because it's just, you know, it's just Hiranyagarbha is a manifestation. It's like an assistant to Ishvara to bring out what Maya and Ishvara have planned. That's what it's just, you know, basically just like Yama is the clearinghouse of the Jivas. Hiranyagarbha is the place where the Jivas are, you know, sent to their way. I mean, sorry, Lord Yama is the place where all the Jivas are sent to various destinations. Hiranyagarbha is a place of creation, of potential. Yeah. Okay. Om Namah Shivaya.
Shivaya.